Welcome to Being Aro Ace Part 3, where we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into the asexual spectrum and sub-identities and such. Asexuality can be or is an umbrella or a spectrum, as well as an identity in itself. There are many sub-identities and microlabels to more accurately or more detailed describe experiences. The base definition of asexuality is someone who does not experience sexual attraction towards anyone of any gender, but a slightly more inclusive and identity that might be not experiencing sexual attraction towards anyone of any gender, or with a frequency or pattern seen as not enough or not standard. And some people in the asexual community might find that their experiences feel closer to ace than allo communities, asexual and allosexual communities. So even though they technically experience sexual attraction, they might do it in a way that feels closer to different or asexual experiences, and if that is the case, you are perfectly welcome. This is not going to be an exhaustive list of sub-identities and microlabels. I've chosen ones that you might come across more frequently within the community, or if you delve deeper into it or do more research on your own. But the rest, all the other ones that exist, are not less valid because they're not in this specific video, of course. If you do more of your own research, etc., you might find variations on the definitions of different identities depending on your exact source or who you talk to. I have tried here in this video to put together just kind of shorter summaries and a bit more kind of like general definitions for the concepts that I have. But not all of them might take into account all the variation that is technically included in said identity. And I've also put a flag to every identity because people like flags, and that's awesome. But many of these identities actually have several flags, or they have variations or new variations, and for some of them you might see different people using different flags because they might like one flag over another subjectively. But I have chosen one flag for each identity, and I've chosen the one that I perceive to be the more common one or version. So we're going to start with asexual. On the asexual spectrum, you can be asexual. Asexual is both an umbrella term and a specific identity. Someone who's asexual does not experience sexual attraction to anyone of any gender ever. Just like that, nothing, nada, niet. And the flag that is often used for asexuality is often also used to signify the asexual spectrum. There might be a flag that is specific for asexual spectrum, but you will often see this asexual flag no matter if people are talking about the specific identity or more the umbrella term. Then we have graysexual, which you can spell with an E or an A, depending on if you're American or British. This is someone who experiences sexual attraction rarely, weakly, unstably, or unreliably, and or gains or loses the attraction under certain, maybe unknown circumstances. So it's a bit of a broader term that is inclusive of a lot of things. It can actually be used as an umbrella term for asexual identities which experience some level of sexual attraction, but it is also an identity or orientation completely on its own, and is up to the individual, of course, to determine if they think it fits or not. Some people might use this orientation to signify that they feel at home in the asexual community or under the asexual umbrella, but they're not, they don't feel like specifying, or it is hard for them to specify any further on their identity. Graysexual can be an orientation on its own, or it can be combined with other sexual orientations. So you could technically be graysexual, gray bisexual, for example. And in that case, graysexual describes more the pattern of your attraction, not necessarily what genders you are attracted to. Then we have demisexual. This is someone who does not experience sexual attraction until they have formed a deep emotional connection with someone, although not necessarily even then. This identity, you might, if you research it, you might see that there is almost kind of a debate, not if it exists or not, but it can be easy to misinterpret or misunderstand. Being demisexual is not the same as someone who only engages in sexual behavior after a bond has already been established with someone. You might find people who say, well, what's so special about being demisexual? I don't have sex with people until I am close to them either. And that's not the point. What you are describing then is sexual behavior. Demisexuality describes sexual attraction. It describes the fact that you cannot develop sexual attraction towards another human unless you already have a bond established with them. This means that a demisexual person will not develop sexual attraction towards a celebrity or to someone they've never spoken to or to someone they are swiping on Tinder, for example, from just a photo or from a movie, which a lot of allosexual people can do. Like you hear people who say that they are attracted to celebrities, for example. They don't actually know the celebrity, but they are capable of forming sexual attraction towards that celebrity. Someone who's demisexual does not. They need a bond to be already established for sexual attraction to even be something that is possible at all. That does not mean, of course, that they are sexually attracted to everyone they have a bond with, just as a heterosexual man is not attracted to every single woman in existence. That is just not how it works. So an already existing relationship is the only way a demisexual person could be able to experience, or would be able to experience sexual attraction. I'm spending a lot of time here because there is a debate. We are talking about attraction, not behavior. Behavior and attraction are not the same thing. Behavior is often motivated by attraction, but they are not a one-to-one correlation. Behavior and attraction are not the same thing. Orientations are based on attraction, not behavior. Demisexuality can be a sexual orientation on its own or can be combined with other orientations. So someone might say that they are a demi-homosexual, for example, or a demisexual lesbian, or such. Then we have Freysexual or ignatosexual. Some of these orientations might have several names or words for different reasons historically, or there might have been debate on if one of the words is okay or not, etc. So I'm going to list all of the names, so if you run across one or the other, you will know what it is. And I will not get into any debates. This is someone who only experiences sexual attraction towards those that they are not deeply connected with, and might lose that attraction as they get to know the person. So this is often described as the opposite of demisexual. So someone who's Freysexual could absolutely develop sexual attraction towards, for example, a celebrity. But if they were ever to meet or build a bond with that celebrity, their attraction might simply fade as they build a connection with that person. Whereas a demisexual person will not develop sexual attraction towards a stranger or a celebrity, but as they get to know that person, when they have a bond established, they might develop sexual attraction then. So Freysexual can be a sexual orientation on its own, or can be combined with other orientations, like many of these. It is totally up to the person who is experiencing this. Then we have Lithsexual or acoisexual. This is someone who may experience sexual attraction, but their feelings fade if reciprocated or once they engage in sex or sexual activity with said person. Because of this, some lithsexual people do not want to have their feelings reciprocated. They might simply not want to engage in any sexual behavior, even though they have attraction, or they might simply not want their feelings to fade. But the point is that you are attracted to someone, but if that is reciprocated, your feelings might fade. Or you are attracted, but you absolutely do not want to engage in any sexual activity. And lithsexual can be a sexual orientation on its own or can be combined with other orientations. Then we have reciprosexual. This is someone who does not experience sexual attraction unless they know that the other person is sexually attracted to them first. So in a way, this is the opposite of lithsexual. You are only capable of developing sexual attraction if it's in a reciprocating response to someone else. Reciprosexual can be a sexual orientation on its own, or it can be combined with other orientations. And if you have seen the flags for the aromantic identities, you might notice that the aromantic and asexual identities have very similar flags. There is overlap between the communities. And they use many of the same words too, of course. So we have Aceflux, someone whose sexual orientation fluctuates, but generally stays on the asexual spectrum. Some Aceflux people may feel like they are allosexual at times. So sexual orientation in general can fluctuate, it can change over time, it can change in intensity or etc. for anyone. But being Aceflux, it might happen a bit more frequently or be what is perceived as the core part of someone's identity, in a sense, the pattern. And Aceflux can be a sexual orientation on its own, or it can be combined with other orientations. Then we have Acevague, an orientation influenced partially or fully by one's neurodivergency. For example, if autism influences one's sexual attraction. So human identity parts and experiences do, of course, not exist in a vacuum. One part of your identity is not completely unrelated to another part of your identity. There is a lot of intersectionality going on. Humans are complicated. So being neurodivergent, for example, having autism, could, for some, have an impact on how they experience their sexual orientation. And for some, it might not. Everyone's different. Then we have coysexual or WTF sexual. I don't know if WTF sexual was originally coined as a joke. Same with WTF romantic, but I think it's hilarious and great. This has a couple different definitions. It encompasses a variety. Can be a person who cannot distinguish between sexual attraction and other types of attraction, such as romantic or platonic attraction. Can include not knowing one's sexual orientation or not wanting to define one's sexual orientation. Finding the concept of sexuality or sexual attraction to be inaccessible, inapplicable, or nonsensical. Questioning one's sexual identity for such a long time that the questioning itself becomes the identity, rather than a path towards any other more stable identity. Then we have nebula sexual. Someone who cannot tell if they experience sexual attraction or not due to neurodivergency or intrusive thoughts, urges, or images. So this is essentially WTF sexual or coysexual, but with the added component of neurodivergency. The term nebula sexual should only be used by neurodivergent people or people with intrusive thoughts, urges, and images. Then we have two microlabels that you might run across fairly frequently, or might come across. We have Cupio sexual, someone who does not experience sexual attraction but still desires or likes a sexual relationship. May also be used by people who sometimes feel sexual attraction but desire a sexual relationship even without attraction. So these microlabels, for some people, this might be what they consider their entire orientation. But for others, it is a way to incorporate behaviors or feelings or wants into kind of their attraction. So for many, it is rather a microlabel than a full identity on its own. But it is up to each person to decide what fits them. And someone who is cupiosexual could be asexual, but still want to have a sexual relationship because of other motivating factors than simply sexual attraction. It could also be someone who is, for example, lithsexual, and who, despite attraction fading, still would like to participate in a sexual relationship. And then last but not least, we have eigosexual or autochoresexual, which is also general a microlabel. So it describes behavior more than attraction. This describes those who have a disconnection between themselves and the subject of arousal. Eigosexuals may have sexual fantasies, watch or read sexual media, or masturbate, but tend to feel limited sexual attraction or none at all, and typically do not desire to have sex with another person. So you could definitely enjoy watching sexual media, but you have no desire to actually participate in sex yourself, or sometimes also defined as if you have sexual fantasies, you are not necessarily part of the sexual fantasy. It is more like playing a movie in your head or being in third person. But there is a disconnect between yourself and the subject of arousal, or why you're watching it. You don't want to participate in it yourself. And those are the identities that I have in here. This is, of course, again, not an exhaustive list of identities or microlabels. There are many, many more, but I chose those that I think you might possibly run into more frequently, and the ones I thought might be a good place to start if you want to delve deeper or do more research on your own, or you don't really know maybe where to start because you might just come across a list and it looks like a lot. And then lastly, no one can define your identity but yourself. No one else is living your experience, and you, at the same time, you cannot decide for anyone else what their identity is or how they feel, or what words they use. Having words to talk about your identity and experience is very important and can be very empowering, and it also helps you to find others who might have the same experiences with you and who can relate to you, or you can relate to them, which can be a very powerful and empowering thing. Some people might like to describe themselves with 10 or 20 words, while others might not want to use labels at all, or maybe 1 or 2 words. And none of that is more wrong or right. So just a PSA, please don't gatekeep words. Let people talk about their identities. The primary source for this video was the LGBTA Wikipedia, and I will link that in the description below, but there are loads of other sources and places on the internet and books and other things that you can read up if you want to do your own research or get into the asexual community.